Welcome to Women on Men, where we explore modern dating through the eyes of women. Today's topic is the bad boy dilemma. I'm your host, Rafael Gomez. My guest today is Robyn Silber. Robyn is an ex-Google engineer turned content creator. She posts videos addressing the male loneliness crisis and an audience frequently overlooked, the men who aren't getting laid but don't hate women. Welcome, Robyn.
Hey, Rafael. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. So I love your channel, and I appreciate that you're trying to address the male loneliness crisis. What made you decide to get involved?
I realized that no one was addressing the audience of men who aren't getting laid but don't hate women, and also that there was a lack of women creators in this space and creators who are also ADHD and autistic, because so many of men who get sucked into the red pill manosphere subgroups are often autistic.
I did not realize that. So because they're autistic, they're more prone to listening to that content or more prone to seek the kind of advice that they give?
I would say that a lot of autistic people are characterized as being impressionable.
Got it. And so red pill content, which is going to show up on their feed almost no matter what. Like it's happening. If you're a guy on YouTube, it's going to show up. So because they're autistic, they might be more impressionable. And for that reason, that's where you're trying to help.
Yeah, and also a lot of the people who are just struggling socially or romantically are also autistic people or ADHD or some type of neurodivergent.
That makes a lot of sense. I haven't looked into that community and their ties to red pill, but that might be something I need to also address. I never really thought of it that way.
I think it's estimated that about 40% of people who identify as incels have a formal autism diagnosis. And because autism is often underdiagnosed, it's possible that number would be even higher.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Good information. I'm glad you shared that. Now I can look into that as well on my end. So to kick off the conversation before we get into the main topic, what is your current relationship status?
I am dating someone that I've been seeing for a year. I'm in a relationship, but I would say it's more of a modern relationship.
How so? If you don't mind divulging.
Sure. In that I have the freedom to date other people. I have a primary partner who I'm crazy about, who is courting me properly, and we have separate lives, we have separate homes, and I'm so happy.
Nice. How did you meet your main partner?
We met on Hinge a number of years ago, but it took me about 3 years before I finally took him up on a first date.
3 years?
Yeah, he waited patiently. No, but we both had other things going on. We were in other relationships, and then somehow the stars aligned, the timing was right. I happened to reach out at the right moment, and here we are a year later.
So what made you reach back out to him? You were just like, it's time.
So I had added him on social media because I realized he was cool, and I just wasn't in a place where I was ready to be with someone who was a worthy partner. And he never posts on social media, and I noticed a bunch of his women friends congratulating him, and he was reposting their stories. And there's something to be said about a woman endorsing a man, a platonic friend who's a woman endorsing her guy friend. I was like, oh, if this is how his women friends feel about him, he must be a pretty amazing guy.
So he got the social proof from his friend group, basically. Like you saw that his friend group approved of him as a person, and that made you say, maybe I can give him another look. Is that kind of it?
Yeah.
A lot of guys think that the social proof comes from a lot of women being attracted to the guy. Like, let's say he takes a lot of photos with a lot of women that looks like he's dating them. But for you, it was more that the quality of the person seemed to come through from his friendships.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What do you have a type? Are there physical characteristics you're always looking for in your partners?
When I was younger, I had a type. I would go for men that looked like Barbie dolls, but like Ken dolls. And, it was shallow, and I wouldn't ever necessarily connect with these men because physical attraction is so much different from sexual attraction. You can find someone physically attractive, but it goes so much deeper to actually want to sleep with someone, and as I've gotten more mature, I've realized that what I'm really into is someone who's a good person, someone that I share values with, and someone who's ambitious. It doesn't have to mean that they make a lot of money, but I like someone who has something going on.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about somebody when they have ambition. But in terms of the physical, we'll get back to that. In terms of the physical, so maybe back in the day, you would see a Barbie guy or a Ken guy, and would that be enough for you to feel something? Like, would you pursue something, maybe even sexual, just because of the physicality at some point?
Yes, and I would say most of my long-term relationships prior to this one were, the thing I pursued was their looks. And then these relationships were often sexless because I wasn't connecting with them emotionally, which would then translate into me not connecting with them sexually. So there was always this, you know, this push and pull where we just couldn't see eye to eye because we weren't really a good match. I was so influenced by messages from the media that have, really defined beauty standards around like Eurocentric white supremacist ideals. And when you deconstruct from that, you realize that those aren't important. Height's not important. Or, someone having washboard abs isn't important, or a perfect smile. That there's so many other qualities that I find physically attractive that don't meet those standards, that they're irrelevant.
So maybe when you were younger, you were physically attracted. Maybe there was an initial spark. There was some sexual activity, but then you just realize over time that with that same person that you're like, I'm not really into you that way. And the sex kind of fades away. It kind of goes away eventually. So it doesn't even last, that long on a physical level. It's going to take more for you to want to continue to sleep with this person, it seems like.
Yes, for sure. And I would also say I do have a type, and it's not a physical aspect. It's that I like men who are pursuing things in the arts, whether it be I've dated like a painter, I've dated men who are writers, men who are associated with art galleries. Sure, some of the men I've dated are business owners, but I generally go for men who are pursuing a passion in the humanities.
Interesting. And that's something that changed for you when? Like, what age do you think you started to see that trend?
When I was 33.
33. Yeah, I think that goes to your point about ambition. I try to tell men it's not necessarily your income. It's not your 401k at your job and all that. It's more like, are you passionate about something? Are you going for something? Do you go after what you want? Do you do the things you say you're going to do? I have found that to be attractive, not just the necessarily, the pay stub that you get, from your job. It's more like, how do they feel about their job? How do they act in their job? How do they act in their daily life in terms of the things they pursue?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I think there's other aspects of it too, and I would say that men being raised in a way in which they're expected to detach from their emotions, that often you don't really get to know who a man is, especially for the first few months. And as a result, when you date a man who is pursuing something in the arts, that becomes a form of artistic expression. So I get to see who he is through his creations. And as a result, I get to actually know who he is.
Interesting. Is there a type of art that draws you in more? Like, is it music or is it visual?
All of them, any one of them.
All of them. That's
But
awesome.
I also really like men who are pursuing something in physical fitness. I really like men connecting to their bodies, and somehow there are men who are in both of those, in the arts and in physical fitness.
So when it comes to your current partner, how much of it was the physicality versus the ambition and character?
Oh, man, I've never been so attracted to someone that I've dated. And it's not like he fits a particular mold of like the physical aesthetic that I'm into. He's so charming and thoughtful and creative. The chemistry between us is really, really good.
Awesome. So you don't necessarily have like a set income that your partner needs to have. You don't have necessarily a set height. You're looking for an amalgam of traits that just really you feel a chemistry based on a number of things. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so into the main topic. Now, it sounds like since you were dating Kens, you maybe, I don't know how much experience you had with the bad boys in your life, like what we call the bad boy. A lot of the men I speak to, they're kind of upset that women like bad boys, and I can get it. I can understand because I think men were told you got to be a nice guy, be a good person, and women will like you. But then the girl that a guy might like is now with someone that he considers or she considers a bad boy. What's your experience with this personally?
I've had my fair share of men I've had to get restraining orders against.
Oh my goodness!
So,
So
I've definitely
really
been
bad
there.
boys.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I've definitely had to call the police on men that I've dated in the past. Luckily, only two, but, I've had my fair share of bad boys.
What age were you when this was happening?
One of the times was 21 and or 22-ish. The other time was in my early 30s. The
Wow.
last time.
And what drew you to these men?
Insecurities in myself, that I was duped by this projection of confidence that really wasn't coming from a place of security in them. It was coming from a place of manipulation, bad intentions, and insecurities in themselves.
And so, how did the bad boy persona exemplify itself when you first met these people, or what did it come out more when you were dating them?
A little bit of both, but it would be often love bombing and then a little bit of cruelty, some backhanded compliments like, "Oh, I showed a picture of you to my coworker and he said that you weren't the hottest girl I've dated, but the second hottest."
Whoa. How did that make you feel when he said something like that?
I was like, "Well, you're the ugliest guy I've dated." So I didn't say that to him, but I was like, "You are so lucky to be dating me, and like this is not bringing us closer." Luckily, in that relationship, I that was the last cycle of like toxic that I've dealt with, and I've matured so much since then. I've learned so much, but I didn't. That one didn't pan out long. That was my shortest of my three abusive, toxic relationships.
So, what about people in your life? Do you know of people who also tend to date the bad boy or have a past of dating the bad boy?
Do I know of people? Yes. Am I close with people like that anymore? No, because it's usually a reflection of where they're at in their life. And, as a result, those toxic characteristics that they're drawn to are cycles that they still haven't finished playing out. So they often come up in the friendship. So as a result, I've had to cut off friendships with people who, aren't addressing their mental health issues in that they're harming all of the people around them.
Got it. What do you think? You mentioned, I think you hinted at it, but what do you think it is that makes these men attractive to women outside of maybe what you're saying is their own personal issues that they're dealing with?
Um, I would say maybe like brainwashing by the media that's portrayed men who are bad boys as being attractive. If that hadn't been so normalized, I think that we might not be so susceptible to it.
Interesting. You mentioned the confidence that they exemplified, which I'm big on confidence. Confidence is like kind of my MO. My handbook I wrote was about confidence. It's what I think I try to give men because even if they never have a relationship, confidence is something that I think can carry you through life. Because it really, at the end of the day, is an admiration of yourself. Like you like yourself, not to the point where you're Kanye West, but you're more like, I'm so confident in myself, I don't need to prove it. I don't need to tell somebody that I'm confident because it'll just show up. I don't need to put somebody else down because putting somebody else down doesn't make me feel better because I'm confident. In terms of the insecurity, it sounds like when these men were pretending to be confident or portraying confidence, when they would put you down, it was kind of like a way to make themselves feel better as well and also make you feel worse to kind of maybe change the dynamics of the relationship.
Yeah, it was for power. it wasn't coming from a place of security, and it was probably much more so arrogance than actual confidence. Because I
Yeah.
agree with you, confidence is so attractive. It's attractive even in a friendship. I find that I can't even really be friends with someone who is off put by my confidence if they're struggling with their own, because it's going to cause a rift between us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely know there's a difference between confidence and then the line of arrogance and cocky. And it seems like bad boys give off a little bit of arrogance. That's kind of like, from my perception as a man, that's how I see these bad boys acting. Because, it always confused me because I was always like a pretty confident, chill guy, but I would see these other guys just being way over the top with it. And it did seem to attract women. And I think it can be an initial attractor. But I do think eventually that kind of personality will weigh on a long term relationship.
Absolutely.
Do you think the bad boy attraction is something that women tend to grow out of? Whether it be maturity or whether it be their own personal growth, or do you think it's something that some women will just pursue for eternity?
I think that most people will grow out of it. I think it's, um, you know, as you get older, as you figure out who you are and you figure out how you want to contribute to the world, you have confidence in yourself, you learn how to discern what's a good person, who's a good person and who isn't. It's a lot harder to fall for those type of techniques.
Yeah, that's something that I think, when you're 21 years old, I would not want any of the decisions I made when I was 21 to basically affect me today, like, because you're young. And I think when guys who aren't successful with women see younger women in college dating these bad boys and they get maybe frustrated with it, I think they tend to cope in a way, especially red pill. They'll say things like, well, women they're ran through in their 20s and now in their 30s, they're ready to settle down, and they're ready to settle down with what they call a beta, like they're like, okay, well, this guy, she wants the college bad boy now, even her 30, let's say 35, they think she still wants that college guy. And instead, I try to, tell them that the message isn't that they still are longing for what they had with that young college guy. What happens is you grow up and you mature and you realize there are traits in somebody that you don't want to tolerate anymore. There are things about people that you're like, if I'm going to spend every day with you, I have to like way more than your looks. I have to like way more than your confidence. There's a lot of things that I'm going to need in order for this to be a long-term relationship. Does that sound right to you, that kind of assessment?
Yeah, for sure. And also, a lot of the tactics that the bad boys use are like predatory behavior, in which they're preying on people who they know can are easily influenced, who can they can take advantage of, because there's someone who's insecure, either emotionally or in having their needs met. So they resort to the love bombing and the future planning that's very premature in the timeline of them getting to know each other. And as a result, someone who's in some type of desperate situation or isn't sure of themselves is comforted by this validation, and they give into it, they succumb to it. So, often people in these like bad boy personas, they have some type of resource or means that they're leveraging in order to take advantage of these women.
Yeah, that's my assumption that, a lot of people, there's a phrase that I've heard. It's you accept the love you deserve, that you feel like you deserve, or something like that. And so if you're being treated poorly by somebody, it could be a reflection of how you feel about yourself, which I think is pretty true. My wife, for example, her dad was very open about how men are, how they operate, how they date, how they might love bomb, how they might tell you everything that you want to hear in order to get what they want. And my wife operated accordingly, like throughout her life. I don't think she ever dated a bad boy, as far as I'm aware. I mean, we talk about her history a lot, and it seems to me that if somebody is extremely mature and they've gone through the personal growth themselves, they'll probably avoid a bad boy. That's my assumption. Is that kind of what you've seen too?
Yeah.
Okay. What about this aspect that women who are with good dudes, maybe, I don't want to say nice guy, because a nice guy, I can understand why a woman wouldn't stick around with a quote unquote nice guy. But let's say he's a good guy, he's confident, he's stable. What about women who tend to maybe appreciate the chaos of a bad boy, or appreciate the drama and the back and forth and the excitement versus a stable good guy who, again, isn't a nice guy, who isn't a pushover, but is stable?
I think that really comes down to being insecurely attached and the push and pull that you're getting from being with someone who's also insecurely attached, and whether that be that they're like avoidant and dismissive, or that they are anxious and constantly needing reassurance. I think the need and want for chaos comes from that. When you work on yourself and you heal those insecurities, you no longer are drawn to that, and as a result, you realize that the problem isn't there being conflict in a relationship. It's that, how do you address it, if at all? And when you address it, are you coming to conflict resolution? And does that bring you two closer together?
Wow. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it seems like if you need like this external excitement, you should probably look inside, because it's like, what is it that you're dealing with that makes you seek this external force to, I don't know, give you that jazz that you need. Like it's interesting, but I think you summed it up really well. I never thought of it like that, so I appreciate it. It sounds like this is something you just have thought about.
I've worked on it a lot. I've been in therapy for a long time. And also, I was really drawn to men who were chaotic for so long, partially because I enjoyed the entertainment. I have a private channel on one of my social media accounts where I share things with people I'm friends with in real life, or people that I've gotten to know online who are my mutuals, who are other, big influencers. And I would share, details about my dating life, where I was constantly going on dates with all these chaotic men. And, a part of me, I think, continued to be drawn to it because I enjoyed the entertaining side of things, where I was having all these crazy stories that, then being in this healthy relationship, I've had to really sit down and ask myself, do I want to actually be in a healthy relationship, or do I want this chaos? Do I want to, be entertaining my friends with? And it's something I'm still working through.
So you're saying even in your current relationship, sometimes you wonder if the stability is what you're looking for, or are you saying now you're in a better place, or what? I'm just trying to clarify.
Now I'm in a better place, but it's more of like relinquishing the want of telling all these crazy stories is part of my journey of maturing and healing.
Yeah. So do you find yourself longing for those entertaining partners again?
No, because my partner now is much more entertaining, but on a wholesome level. It's just that I care about him as a person, so I wouldn't, resort to shit talking him on my private channel. He's on my private channel, so that was part of the appeal. That was why he was interested in me. When we went on the first date, he was like, I can't believe I'm meeting with the Robyn Silber. I rarely tune into social media, but when I do, I watch your stories because you're so entertaining. And I was like, oh, I mean, what a nice compliment coming from an esteemed and what his job is.
Sure. Speaking of first date, what was the first date, if you don't mind sharing?
He took me out for dinner and drinks.
Nice. And he asked and planned, or how did it go?
I reached out to him and was like, let's finally meet, let's finally go on a first date. And he was like, I'm supposed to go out of town, but I'll delay my trip a day to finally meet you. And took me out. He planned it, picked the place and treated me and everything. He's really, really kind to me. And I really like being treated like that in a relationship, because I'm putting in so much other efforts to make myself attractive to you. I think Liz Plank of what's her podcast? Boy Problems. Boy Problems. She says something like, women do so much for men to be attractive to men. Like taking a woman out on a date, planning a date is what men can do if they want to be attractive to women. And that's only if they want to, not telling men what to do. But
yeah, she recently posted something too that was like guys who, don't want to pay for the date. It's like, Okay, but that makes you attractive. Like it makes you attractive. Do you want to attract us or not? Like it just is really that simple. And I believe that too, because a lot of guys complain about what women tend to find attractive. And it's like, do you want to be attractive or would you rather just complain about it? Because I feel like if you really want to attract somebody, take the steps that might attract them. Like it's not even that big of a deal, but they like want to complain about fairness or something.
Yeah.
I actually met Liz Plank recently in LA. We were at a Scott Galloway live podcast, and she was there, and I said hi. So she's really cool.
I just finished reading her book, For the Love of Men.
I love that book.
It's really inspired a lot of my ideas behind what I'm pursuing.
Yeah, and that's what frustrates me too, is like someone like a feminist like Liz Plank is writing a book about For the Love of Men, and yet I'm sure guys come across her content and are just raging at it, and it's like,
you hate men.
Yeah, she's literally trying to help you. Like she wrote a great book about men, and I just love that book. I think she's great. I really appreciate Liz. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on the bad boy before we move on to the next segment?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, cool. So this is a newest segment I'm trying out. It's called Green Flag or Red Pill, which is like a play on green flag, red flag. So I'm going to give you a scenario about a specific behavior men exhibit, and you decide if this is a healthy green flag or is it more of a red pill toxic. Okay, he texts you right after the date to say, I had a great time, get home safe.
Green flag.
He refuses to let you drive or pick the restaurant because he wants to lead.
I'm going to say red pill. It can depend on the context,
sure,
but in general, red pill.
Yeah. He tells you that he's seeing other people early into dating.
Green flag.
You like the honesty, basically, just the heads up?
I think that a lot of us have very traditional ideas about possessiveness and, monogamy, heteronormativity, and part of my own journey of healing and maturing has been letting go of those conditionings that we've learned. And not to say that it's wrong to pursue
sure,
monogamy, but it's a matter of being upfront. If you have multiple partners, you should be disclosing that for the other person's safety.
Yeah, I found that when I was dating, I would tell people, like, we're not monogamous yet, obviously. I just want to let you know I am seeing other people. Just like I would tell people, just full disclosure. I was always a full disclosure kind of person. I feel like put all the cards on the table and you put your cards and we can decide whether or not this is like going to be a good, fit. So yeah, that's why I'm curious about things like that. Okay. He tells you to stop being so emotional and be logical when you are upset.
Red pill.
He admits on an early date that he goes to therapy to work on his mental health.
Green flag.
Okay, I figured this is where you would be, but I always want to get a sense of people. So this brings us to our last segment, which is called Dear Men. This is your open mic. You can take a moment to all the men listening and give them the best dating advice that you have. It could be on any topic or anything that you're anxious to tell guys, especially granting that you work on male loneliness.
The thing that men need to know is that we were all harmed by the system that we're raised under, and that we have all been conditioned to play a role based on the gender we were assigned at birth. And as a result, the person we've developed into was influenced by that conditioning, by that socialization. And it's not that women are harmed worse or men are harmed worse. It's that they're harmed in different ways. I'm very influenced by therapist Terry Real in his book, I Don't Want to Talk About It. It's like the legacy of depression in men. And he explains that women were harmed in that we were disempowered, and that feminism has been the movement, the revolution to help women regain their power, from what was taken from them as children. Men were harmed in that they were bullied into disconnecting, detaching from their emotions, their needs, their wants, and from other people. And as a result, it's hindered their ability to have emotional intelligence. Obviously, not all men. Obviously, it's not necessarily permanent. People can overcome that. It takes a lot of work, but that's men's struggle, and men haven't had their revolution where they address that. So for men who are struggling in dating, the problem isn't that women won't partner with you, it's that you need to address the ways in which you've been conditioned to view women, to view yourself, to view dating. And often it means deconstructing from harmful notions that are hindering not only your own growth, but your ability to connect with other people. That starts with trying to befriend women, because if you don't even have women as friends, you're not going to be able to date a woman, because only the bad boy is going to be that person. And he is going to be lonely ultimately because he doesn't have women friends. You need to view women as people, because being in a relationship isn't all that different from being friends with a woman. It's just you don't have sex with your friend, and you don't kiss your friend, you don't have a physical touch with your friend. Maybe there are friends that you have gray areas with, and that's different. But, ultimately, viewing women as people is really the starting point.
I think you nailed it. And I think that's one of the things I try to convince men who listen to Red Pill, because I've talked to a lot of men who got out of Red Pill, and the vast majority of them say that once they started talking to women and hanging out with women, they realized that all the stuff they were hearing just did not resonate. And I think there's a conditioning happening, like you said, since birth. I also think there's a conditioning happening online. And I think if you live perpetually online, which a lot of the young guys do now, what they think about women is coming from the screen versus their actual experiences, seemingly. And I totally agree that, like, the more guys get out there and they talk to women in a platonic fashion, that's gonna open their eyes to just how easy it actually is to talk to women. And I think when guys put the pressure of romance or sex on the table when they're talking to women, that makes them anxious, or it makes them, say
Desperate.
things that it makes them desperate. It makes them feel desperate.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And it's like, if you're just talking to them like normal, you might get the sex you want anyway. So yeah, no, I think that's great. And in talking about male loneliness, which is something I'm very passionate about, and again, I appreciate that you are too. Besides maybe the autistic aspect, is there anything else that comes to mind as to why this seems to be happening to men under 30? Because they're the ones that seemingly are struggling the most.
This is really one of the first times in history where women don't need to partner with men in order to survive. Yes, women have been able to get jobs and go to school in generations of the past, but we're now seeing the effect of that. And as a result, men don't get to guarantee that they're going to partner and have children, and women suddenly have freedom. And it's not a matter of, oh, we should go back to traditional times. It's that, no, now you should want a woman who wants to be with you, doesn't need to be with you. I think that we often confuse wants and needs, and it's creepy and a turnoff when men are still living in that kind of mindset. Like, for instance, there was a Diary of a CEO interview with a psychiatrist that just came out that everyone's been talking about, where the host was, and the psychiatrists were talking about how, men need to partner with men. With women, they were really positioning incels as like having this need. And it's like, no, they need social interaction. You need social interaction. That is something I would argue is a need. But sex and reproduction are not needs. And it's creepy and gross when men position it like that.
Man, you nailed it. I really appreciate, again, your view on this. I feel like we could talk about it. Maybe I'll have you back on just male loneliness. I feel like that would be a good, just general conversation.
I'd love to.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I thought that was very enlightening. You have such a great take. Where can people follow you on social media? I'll link to your socials on my video, but let them know.
Sure. I haven't launched the support group yet, but in the meantime, you can follow along on Instagram is mainly where I'm on, or TikTok, but I'm Deprogrammer, except the last E is a period.
Did you pick that name because you're trying to deprogram men? Or is that something else?
Yeah, so I used to be programmer when I was still doing software engineering. So, part of the rebranding was like, okay, who am I now that I'm not a software engineer at Google? I'm deprogramming men from their conditioning as, being detached from their emotions and thinking that, women are their subordinates and whatnot. And on a last note, I guess one of the main things I forgot to mention is that masculinity has been defined by hierarchy and domination. And Bell Hooks talks about love being like a mutual enrichment between two people. It's something you choose. It's not something you need. And, as a result, you can never have love in a relationship with domination.
I love it. Bell Hooks, I just wish more men would read. I'm trying to think of the book that I love. It's very short.
The Will to Change.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
It's I linked to it in my book recommendations, but I couldn't think of the name. I wish every guy read that book.
Her books are the Bible, so.
Yeah.
But, the reason they don't, though, on a last note, is because when they hear the word feminism.
I know.
Or patriarchy. So that's really been my approach, is like, I'm meeting men where they're at. I'm not using those words, because if it's going to trigger men, then I'll just dance around it and use other words like women's liberation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I used to, when I debated Andrew Wilson on whatever, I was coming in as a male feminist, and that it automatically puts men on the defensive. And it's like, I'm literally here fighting for you. I'm not here fighting for women. I'm here fighting for men. And that's how I believe feminism can help men too.
Sure. Thank you for the work you're doing. You're doing such awesome work. We need more people like you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. Well, thank you again. And I'm sure we're going to talk again soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Women on Men. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share the show. Women on Men is produced by Rafael Gomez. Click the links in the description to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time, let's continue the work to bring women and men closer.
Well, what you doing now? I can swing by for a bit if you around. We could grab a drink, I got weed by the pound. I could be there in 20, let me know how that sounds. Yeah, I'm on my way, and I'll be there in a hurry. Take a deep breath, I know you love to worry. Fearing for the worst, but you're so wrong. You know it hasn't happened now in so long. Hang tight, I'm on the way, I got the edibles. We could take a load off, feel incredible. When the